what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're going to study Daf Lamed Tes of Masechta Shabbos. It's kind of cool that it's Daf Lamed Tes of Masechta Shabbos since there's Lamed Tes Melachos on Shabbos. And we're going to talk about at least some of those Lamed Tes Melachos. We're starting with a new Mishnah today. Woo, thank God it is a little bit easier, I would say, than the last few days, which have been quite difficult in my humble opinion. Cool. So we're going to start with the new Mishnah. We're going to be talking about cooking. What about if you cook from the heat of the sun, right? What if you have something that got heated by the sun? Can you crack an egg and fry it on that thing? Can you take an egg and put it in the sand that is hot, kind of insulate it in sand and cook it that way? Can you do that? We're gonna, we'll learn that in the Mishnah. And then we're talking about showering on Shabbos and Yom Tov. That comes up. Can you shower on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Does it make a difference if the water was heated beforehand or on Shabbos and Yom Tov? So we're gonna get to these things. So let's jump right in, my good friends. We will begin on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis at the Mishnah, about 6-7 lines from the bottom. So you can't take an egg, I assume it's just egg like in its shell, and put it right next to like a hot water urn and let the heat from the urn cook the egg. Don't do that. This is interesting. So I don't know what these scarves are. Sudaran are scarves. I don't know how exactly you're going to cook on a scarf. Maybe it's not like a woolen scarf. Maybe it's like a metal scarf. I don't know, whatever it is. But clearly, whatever it is something that if it gets hot enough, you'd be able to cook an egg on it. Like crack open an egg and scramble an egg on it. Or maybe like sunny side up. Whatever it might be. It's not talking about when it's in the shell. So let's say you have some kind of thing that gets real hot from the sun. Can you cook an egg on that? So the Chacham seem to say no, and Rabbi Yossi says yes. Okay? And another option, that we're saying not to do, is do not take an egg, a full egg in its shell, and stick it into some really hot sand or earth, and allow it to get cooked by way of the hatmana, by way of the insulation. So mistama, that would be atmana b'davar shemosif hevel. But in any event, this was heated up by the sun, and we're saying not to do it, and Rabbi Yossi seems to agree with that. Okay. This is super duper really cool. How did you used to get hot water back in the day? Right? Nowadays you open the hot water faucet and you get hot water. Back in the day, what if you wanted to have a hot water faucet that you can just open up the faucet and have hot water? What did you do? So check out this very innovative solution. So isn't that cool? In Tiberia, what they did was, there are these chami Tiberia, these hot springs by Tiberia. And I guess that they got hot enough to be able to cook things. So what they did was they took a pipe, and in this pipe there was cold water. Maybe it was coming from the Kinneret, whatever it is. There was a pipe of cold water, and they would run the pipe through these chami Tiberia, through these hot pools, these hot, these hot bodies of water by Tiberia, these hot springs. And then the pipe would get hot in the hot spring, and it would heat up the water in the pipe, and you would have hot water. Very innovative. So, Amr Loen Chachamim, and the Chachamim said to these people in Tiberia, in B'Shabbos, so if we're talking about, can you use this hot water on Shabbos? So, Kechamin Shuchamu B'Shabbos, we're going to treat this water like water that was heated up on Shabbos, V'Asun Berchitzu V'Shtia, and you wouldn't be able to bathe in them, nor would you be able to drink them. Im B'Yom Tiv, and if we're talking about, on Yom Tiv, that this water is getting heated up in the Chami Tiberia on Yom Tiv. So Kecham Shuchamu B'Yom Tiv, V'Asur Berchitzu Mutarim B'Shtia. So then it'll be treated like hot water that got heated up on Yom Tiv, and you wouldn't be allowed to bathe in them, but you would be allowed to drink them. And in the Gemara, we're going to discuss this further. Very interesting. Okay, Ibayalu, the Gemara asked the Kasha, Gilgal Mai. So the Mishnah said, don't cook an egg next to like a hot water urn, from the heat coming from the urn. So what if you did? Can you eat it? So Amar Rav Yosef, Gilgal Chayav Chatas. No, if you did cook it, you would be Chayav a Chatas. Okay, fine. Amar Marbei de Ravina, Afanu Nami Tanina. So Marbei de Ravina says, yeah, we also have a brisa a Mishnah that would teach us the same thing. And that Mishnah says, Kol sheba b'chamin milifnei Shabbos, shon also b'chamin b'Shabbos. This is very interesting. So if you would have, some kind of like so Rashi talks about some kind of maluach, something very salty. I assume it's talking about that they would preserve, like, I don't know, maybe like fish, right? Something like that. They would have, some kind of preserved food, and you wouldn't eat it just immediately. You would first, boil it or soak it in like hot water, and that would, soften it up, and then you'd be able to eat it. So if already on Shabbos you soaked it in water and you made it ready to eat, so then showing also b'chamin b'Shabbos, then you can even put it back into some hot water, when you're ready to eat it, let's say the next day on Shabbos, and there wouldn't be any problem with that, since you already, since already from yesterday, you had soaked it and made it ready to eat. So even if you want to kind of heat it up today and make it, really, geschmack, so then that would be fine, since, as we're going to see, that you had the gemar melacha already yesterday. What melacha are we gemaring? What melacha are we completing? Bishul, right? That basically you have this food that is being preserved in some kind of salty, hard state. So it's not ready to be eaten, right? You can't eat it right now. However, by soaking it in hot water, that kind of completes its bishul, completes its cooking, and now you can eat it. So since already once you soaked it in the hot water from yesterday, you'd be able to eat it. So if you want to just put it back in the hot water today, it'll be fine, because, what's the problem? Bishul? The bishul was already complete yesterday. And what if you didn't soak it in hot water yesterday? Well, the madichin also b'chamin b'Shabbos. So you'd be allowed to rinse it in water on Shabbos, but you wouldn't be allowed to soak it in water, because by soaking it in water, you would be, completing its bishul. But you'd be allowed to rinse it, since, it wouldn't be completing the bishul. Maybe it would make it, a little bit better, but it wouldn't be, the gemar melacha. Okay. Chutz min hamaliach yashan v'kuliyas hahispanin, with the exception being this, older, very, aged, salty food, and some other kind of fish that shadachasan zoig marmelachtan, that just by rinsing it, it already is going to be ready to eat. So then you wouldn't be allowed to, even rinse it in hot water on Shabbos, like pour hot water on Shabbos over it, because that would be its gemar melacha. So shma mina. So the point being, at least the way I understand this, the point being that whatever it takes to complete the bishul of this item, well, then you're going to be, at that point, you'd be chayav, right? So if the bishul requires, soaking it in hot water, well, then soaking it in hot water is going to be, I will be chayav for a bishul. That's its gemar melacha. If all you need to do is pour some water over it, that's its gemar melacha. And I think the point being that if you take an egg and you put it next to hot water urn, right, even though maybe it's not the normal way you'd cook an egg, but if that's going to cook the egg, so it'll cook the egg, and that's that. And therefore you're going to be chayiv for it. Okay? Fine. The Mishnah says, do not, so let's say you had some kind of, we call it scarves, but some kind of material that gets really hot from the sun. Okay? So, and then you take a egg and you crack it on this item, and it gets cooked like this. So the Chacham said that you wouldn't be allowed to eat the egg. Rabbi Yossi seems to say it would be completely fine. Now, so let's go weiter for a sec. So now that which we learn in the Mishnah, and Daf Kuf Mem Vav, Nos netavshil l'soch habor bishvil she'ei shamor, that if you have some kind of a cooked food, and it's hot outside, and you don't want this cooked food to get ruined, so we say you can put it in a pit, because the pit will be a little bit cooler, the sun won't be, blazing on it, so you'd be allowed to put that food in that pit to just kind of prevent it from getting ruined. And what if you have water and you don't want the water to get really hot from the sun? So you could put it into some kind of a vessel and put that vessel, submerge the vessel in water, and the water will keep it cool, no problem. And you can put, if you have some cold food and you want it to heat up, so you can put it, you can just leave it out in the sun and they can get heated up, no problem. So Rabbi Yossi v'lo Rabbanan. So let's say, who's the author of that Mishnah? Must be Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi is the one who's saying over here that you'd be allowed to fry an egg on something that got heated by the sun, right? A toldas achama, right? Something that is basically, exactly. So something that, right, you're not cooking directly from the sun. You're cooking on something that got hot from the sun. Rabbi Yossi says that would be permitted. Chacham says it wouldn't. So let's say that Rabbi Yossi is the author of that Mishnah on Kuf Mem Vav that says that you would be allowed to heat up food directly from the sun. So Rav Nachman says not exactly. In terms of cooking something directly from the sun, everyone would agree that it would be permitted. How come? Because the way of cooking, something that is derech bishul, the way to cook something properly is to cook it with fire. That's the normal way that you cook. And therefore, if you cook something directly from the sun, that's not the normal way to cook, and therefore it would be permitted. Now, if you remember, we had a discussion about sort of like the derech, that you do something. This came up by hotzah, right? We talked about, for example, if a tailor were to go out with his needle stuck into his garment, into his clothing, would he be chayev? And we talked about, since maybe it's not derech hotzah, so then maybe he would be allowed to a little bit, within half an hour of Shabbos. Now over there we said that even though it's not derech hotzah, it would still be aser. Midrabanan. And over here we seem to be saying that since it's not derech bishul, it's completely permitted. How come? So Rashi tells us how come. And he says that in Rashi Dibra Maskil Deshari, he says, De'ein derech bishulu bakach, v'chama ba'or lo michalfa, de'ligzar ha'atuha. Ooh, that's awesome. And there is no need to make a gzera to say that, well, if you can cook something directly in the sun, I might come to then cook something from fire, which is derech bishul, and that would be a problem. Therefore, I have to say that I can't even cook something directly from the sun. You don't need to make that gzera, because he says, what was his lashon? V'chama ba'or lo michalfa. You're not going to switch around the sun for the fire. Ki'ilu, if you see somebody cooking directly in the sun's heat, it's going to be clear like, oh, that's peculiar. Why is he cooking in the sun's heat? It must be because he can't cook, normally on Shabbos. As opposed to, let's say, something, carrying a needle by sticking it into your clothing, it's not going to be like, oh, that's peculiar. I don't know. You might think, oh, okay, I'm allowed to go out with a needle. Who cares if I carry it in my hand or if I stick it into my clothing? That, I guess, is less obvious. And the Chacham felt that we needed to make a gzera and say that you can't even go out with a needle stuck into your clothing, so you don't end up go out with a needle carrying it in your hand. But over here, they didn't feel the need, because nobody's going to see you cooking in the sun and say, oh, wow, what's the difference? I may as well just cook with a fire, and they're going to cook with a fire. It's clear that they're cooking in the sun because they're not allowed to cook in the fire. Fine. So, back to Gemara. So, Amar of Nachman, so in terms of cooking in the heat of the sun, everyone agrees that would be permitted. B'tolda sa'or, kuliyama lo pligi de asur. Now everyone also agrees, certainly, that you wouldn't be allowed to cook in fire itself. Clearly you wouldn't be allowed to put something on the fire, because that would be bishul. But even tolda sa'or, if I would take this scarf and I would heat it up in fire and I would cook an egg on that scarf, of course that would not be allowed either. Because it's part of cooking with, it's a tolada of cooking with fire. I guess it would be considered part of derech bishul. Whereas Rashi says, the asr dahave bishul, it's just straight up bishul. Ki pligi b'toldos hachama. The question is, the machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah is davka regarding when you're cooking with something that got heated up by the sun. That the Chachamim say, yes, even though cooking something directly from the sun is mutter, and therefore cooking something, maker adin, cooking something that was heated up by the sun should certainly be mutter. It's like one instance removed, maybe you can even argue. However, the Chacham are concerned that if somebody sees you frying an egg on this scarf that was heated by the sun, they don't know how it got heated up. They don't know that it was heated by the sun. Maybe they're assuming that it got heated up by a fire. And then they're going to end up frying an egg on something that got heated up by the fire, and that would not be allowed. So Chacham say, therefore you can't even fry an egg on something that got heated up by the sun. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says that he's not concerned that somebody who sees you is going to say, oh, I may as well go and heat up a scarf in a fire and cook that way. Okay, fine. And therefore, one last thing. And therefore, this Mishnah, Kuf Mem Vav, that says that you're allowed to heat up food in the sun could really be either the Chacham or Rabbi Yossi, because everyone agrees that you'd be allowed to cook something directly in the sun. V'loyat minena b'chol. So the Gemara continues. And so our Mishnah said that you would not be allowed to take an egg and, kind of cover it up in some really hot sand and cook an egg that way. And everyone seems to agree on that. Even Rabbi Yossi, who we just said, says that you'd be allowed to cook something on a tolada of the sun, but he says that you wouldn't be allowed to stick an egg into the ground and cover it in really hot sand and cook it that way. V'liflog nami Rabbi Yossi b'ha. But shouldn't Rabbi Yossi also argue here and say that it's permitted to cook something in the sand? So now we have machlokas, Rabba and Rav Yosef. So Rabba Amar Gezer Shem Yatmin Beremetz. Rabba says this is a little different in that here we're talking about hatmana. Here we're talking about insulating something with this sand and cooking it that way. And even though me'ikar adin, in principle, Rabbi Yossi would say, yeah, look, essentially you're cooking it in the sun and that would be okay. However, if we allow you to cook an egg in insulation made of sand, you might then say, oh, well, what's the difference if I, cook this egg by insulating it in sand, or if I cook this egg by insulating it in remetz, which is, like the ash from a fire, and there might be some coals in there. And as we learned on Daf, Yud Tesam Beis? Was it that, or Chafam Beis? Somewhere. Or Chavdal Beis? Oh gosh, I'm forgetting already. I don't know. Lama Daladam Beis, I think. Oh gosh, I'm like all over the place. Yeah, there it is. We learned that in Daf Lama Daladam Beis, that you wouldn't be able to insulate Davka, you're not allowed to insulate something even on before Shabbos with Davra that Mosif Hevel, because we're concerned that you might insulate with Remetz, which has coals in it, and we're concerned about Shemayachta B'Gechalim. Therefore, so even Rabbi Yossi is going to admit that you can't put an egg into the sand and cook the egg that way, because we're concerned that if you do that, then you might end up insulating the egg in remetz, in this ash, and it might have some coals in there, and that's going to be also because of Shemei Yachata B'Gechalim. Fine. Rav Yosef Amar, Mipnei Shemezis Afar Mimakomo. Rav Yosef says that Rav Yossi is going to agree that you may not put this egg into the sand, because we're concerned that maybe if the ground, well, either sand or hot ground, right? It also says Ba'afar, right? Because you might end up digging into the ground, right? If the sand or the dirt isn't so soft, you might have to dig the hole, and then it's going to be chofer guma, right? Digging, which is not allowed. And that is why Rav Yossi agrees that it's not allowed. My benai, what's an afkamina between Rav Yosef and Rabbah? So Ika Benayu offer Tichoach. The nafkamina would be, what if the sand is very soft? Or the dirt. If it's very soft and you can easily put the egg in there, well then Rav Yosef's concern about digging a pit, digging a hole isn't an issue. But Rabba's concern about that, well, you might then go and insulate with remetz is still relevant. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, megalglin beitza al gabe gag roseach, ve megalglin beitza al gabe sid roseach. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that you'd be allowed to, cook an egg while it's in its shell by you're just putting it on top of a very hot roof. So you have this roof that got very hot from the sun. So you'd be allowed to put an egg on there and let it cook that way. Okay. But if you have like some very hot lime which got heated up in the oven by fire, so then you wouldn't be allowed to cook an egg on that. Okay, fine. But nonetheless, we see what? That on this roof, you would be allowed to cook the egg. So I understand Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's assertion that you'd be allowed to put this egg on this roof that got heated up by the sun, according to Rabbah, who says that the only reason why you wouldn't be allowed to cook this egg in sand or dirt is because you're insulating it, and then you might come to insulate with remetz. But over here, you'd be allowed to put the egg on the roof because there's no issue of insulating. You're not insulating it in anything. But according to Rav Yosef, who says that the issue is that you might have to, dig a hole, well, shouldn't you also be concerned about digging a hole in your roof? So why should Rav Shimon Gamliel say that you'd be allowed to cook an egg on the roof in the sun? You might dig a hole. Stam gag leis be'afer. The Gemara says, actually, most roofs don't have so much dirt that you're going to dig. So even Rav Yosef would say that it makes sense that you'd be allowed to cook an egg on the roof, and there's nothing to be concerned about. Okay. Weiter. Now the Mishnah had continued and said, right, so Tashma, come in here. Maise sha'asu anshe Tiveria. There was a story about the people from Tiveria, Veviu silon shel tzonen lesochama shel chamen v'chulei. That they took a pipe that had cold water running through it, and they channeled it through the hot springs of Tiveria in order to heat it up that way. So now, in the Mishnah, it was brought immediately after the Mishnah said that you may not take an egg and stick it into the sand on Shabbos and let it cook by the insulation of the sand. And it would sound like this is kind of a support for that. You have this pipe that's running through the Chami Tiveria, and it's being insulated by this hot water, and it's heating up the water in the pipes that way. So it's insulation, and the Chacham said that you can't do that. Right? Well, if it's Shabbos, you wouldn't be able to drink it or bathe in it. If it's Yom Tov, you'd be able to drink it but not bathe. So this seems to be a proof to say that cooking something, heating something up via insulation would not be allowed. So now, so I understand why the Chachamim said that you wouldn't be allowed to run this pipe through the Chami Tiveria if we're understanding that the issue with cooking the egg in the sand was an issue of hatmana. So and therefore, if you can cook the egg in the sand, you might be do hatmana b'remetz. So we make the same gezerah here. If you're going to run this pipe through the Chami Tiveria and you're going to be cooking the hot water by way of hatmana, you're going to be cooking the water in the pipes by way of insulating it in the Chami Tiveria, so then I understand why it's also, because if you can insulate it in the Chami Tiveria, I might insulate it in remetz. But according to Rav Yosef, who says that the only issue with cooking the egg in the sand is just that you're going to, you might end up digging into the earth in order to put the egg in there. Well, that might be fine for putting an egg in the ground. But why shouldn't I be able to run a pipe through hot water and let it cook that way? So the Gemara says, Maise Tiveria. Michael Amemer. So misavad Maise Tiveria asefakoi, areishakoi. So Rav Yosef will answer, actually, this story about this, very clever move for heating up the water in the pipes through the Chami Tiveria is actually not related to cooking an egg in the sand. It's actually related to cooking an egg on something that got heated up by the sun, frying the egg on something that got heated up by the sun, where the Chacham said that it wouldn't be allowed, right? Because we make a gzera of something that got heated up from the sun, based on something that may have gotten heated up by fire. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says it's permitted because we don't make that the gzera. So now, right, lo yafkiyena b'sudarin, that the Chacham said that you may not crack an egg and cook it on these scarves that got heated up by the sun. Rabbi Yossi mater, Rabbi Yossi says it's permitted. V'hachi kamei le'Rabbanan Rabbi Yossi. And now this is what the Rabbanan are responding to Rabbi Yossi. Ha'maised anshe Tiveria, they told us chamahu ve'asri le'Rabbanan. But what about the Chamei Tiveria? This is water that's heated up by the sun, and the Chachamim are saying that they wouldn't be allowed to run their pipes through it. But why not? If it got heated up by the sun, what should be the problem? According to you, Rabbi Yossi, if something that gets heated up by the sun, you can crack an egg and cook on it, so why can't I run this cold water pipe through water that's been heated up by the sun? So very interesting answer. Amrlu, so Rabbi Yossi responded to them, Hahu told us Orhu. Actually, the Chamei Tiveria, they're not heated up by the sun, they're heated up by fire. What? What fire is the Chamei Tiveria heated up by? Who could tell me? The fires of hell. Wow, that the Chamei Tiveria passed by the gate of hell, and that's how they get hot. So in essence, these pipes that the people of Tiveria were running through the Chamei Tiveria were actually they were actually being heated up by a tolada of fire of hell. All right, so that's why they weren't allowed to be used according to Rabbi Yossi. Good idea, Rabbi Yossi. Smart move. Just like how are the Rabbanan even supposed to respond to that? Okay, fine, very good. Amar Rav Chizda, said Rav Chizda, Mimaisa shasu anshe Tiveria v'asu li Rabbanan v'teila atmanu b'davar mosef hevel v'afilu mibod yom. So Rav Chizda says that from the story, Mimaisa shasu anshe Tiveria, from the story of the anshe Tiveria, of the people of Tiveria with their pipe that they ran through the Chamei Tiveria, v'asu li Rabbanan, and the rabbis informed them that what they're doing is not allowed on Shabbos. B'teila hatmana b'davar mosef hevel. So we see that hatmana, with something that increases heat, is not allowed, even from before Shabbos, right? So, right, insulating something with something that increases heat, okay, such as over here by the Chamei Tiveria, where you had this pipe of cold water running through the Chamei Tiveria, and the Chamei Tiveria were hot enough that they were actually able to cook, right? So you were insulating it in this water, you were submerging this pipe in the water, and by being surrounded by all this hot water, insulated by all this hot water, it was cooking the water. So it's hatman b'davar mosef hevel, something that increases heat. And we say that it's not allowed even before Shabbos, right? Because they were setting up the pipe before Shabbos, and I guess at least maybe some of the water was being heated up before Shabbos and insulated before Shabbos. So the Rabbanan said it's not allowed. So we see that hatman b'davar mosef hevel is not allowed even if it's before Shabbos. Omar Ula, halacha k'anshe Tiveria. So Ula says that the halacha is like the anshe Tiveria. So I think what this means actually just now as I'm reading it now, I just had to stop for a second because I thought of I was assuming differently up until now. But I think what Ula is saying is actually that the halacha is like the anshe Tiveria in that you would be allowed to do this, I guess. That you would be allowed to run the pipes through this hot water and do atmana. But Amalei Rav Nachman, Kvar Tavinu Anshe Tiveria L'Silunayu. Rav Nachman says, actually, the fact of the matter is that the people of Tiveria have already broken these and dismantled these pipes, and actually, clearly the halacha is not like the Anshe Tiveria. They already reversed this whole thing. They realized it was not a good idea, and the Anshe Tiveria are no longer doing this Hatmana B'davar Mosef Hevel. So I guess the point being that you would not be allowed to do Atmana B'davar Mosef Hevel. Okay. The Gemara continues. Ma'aseh Shasu Anshe Tiberia. The Gemara continues to talk about this story with the Anshe Tiberia, and more specifically the response of the Chachamim to the Anshe Tiberia, being that, if this water was heated up on Shabbos, so then it would be forbidden to drink it or to bathe in it. And if it was Yom Tov, you'd be allowed to drink it, but not to bathe in it. So my rechitza, when we talk about bathing over here, okay, that on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, you would not be allowed to bathe in this water that was heated up on Shabbos. What's bathing? We're talking about mamish, like going in a bath. We're talking about just washing your face. We're talking about showering. What are we talking about? So if we're talking about bathing, going in a bath with your entire body, okay, and we're saying that since the water was heated up on Shabbos, you wouldn't be allowed to bathe your entire body on it. So does that mean that the issue is only because the hot water was heated up on Shabbos, therefore you're not allowed to bathe your whole body? However, if the hot water was heated up before Shabbos, if you have hot water prepared before Shabbos, you'd be allowed to bathe your entire body in that hot water? But we learn in the Brisa, if you have hot water that was heated up already before Shabbos, the macha rochetz ba in panav yadav v'raglav, aval lo kol gufo. So we have a Brisa that says that if you have hot water that was heated up from before Shabbos, you'd be allowed to use that hot water to wash your face, your hands, and your feet, but not your entire body. So then clearly we can't be talking about washing your entire body, right? We can't be saying that the Chachamim were saying that since it was heated up on Shabbos, you can't wash your entire body, because that would imply that if it was heated up before Shabbos, you would be allowed to wash your entire body in it, but we have a Brisa that says that you wouldn't. Okay, fine. So rather, let's say that we're talking about washing your face, your hands, and your feet. That if the water was heated up on Shabbos, you wouldn't be allowed to wash your hands, your face, and your feet. But if you heat it up before Shabbos, you would be allowed to wash your hands, your face, and your feet. However, Ema Seifa, but now let's move on in the Mishnah. It says, B'Yom Tiv, if the hot water was heated up on Yom Tiv, Kecham and Shucham B'Yom Tiv, right? So then we would have to treat this water in the pipes like hot water that got heated up on Yom Tiv. V'Asurin B'Rechitza, U'Mutarin B'Shtiya. You'd be allowed to drink them, but you wouldn't be allowed to wash in them. And if we're talking about washing your hands, your feet, and your face, well, you wouldn't be allowed to wash, meaning that then we're implying that if you heat up hot water on Yom Tif, you wouldn't be allowed to use that water to wash your hands and your feet and your face. But le'matnan stama kvei Shammai, well then it would sound like for some strange reason our Mishnah is going like Beis Shammai. But why would our Mishnah be going like Beis Shammai? The Tanan, as we learn in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai Omrim, Lo yicham adam chamin l'raglav, ele imkein ru'in l'shtiya. That Beis Shammai says that you shouldn't heat up hot water on Yom Tiv for your feet unless they're fit for drinking. Because once they're fit for drinking, so then I guess you can use them ready for your feet. Beis Hillel matir, and Beis Hillel says no, you would be allowed to heat up hot water on Yom Tiv for your feet. So 1 second. So if we're saying that the rechitza in the Mishnah is talking about your face, your hands, and your feet, well, while that might make sense for Shabbos, that if you heat up water on Shabbos, you can't use it for your hands, your feet, and your face. But if you heat it up before Shabbos, then you can. But on Yom Tif, we're saying that you also wouldn't be allowed. And if we're talking about hands, feet, and face, you would be allowed to heat up water on Yom Tif for your hands, your feet, and your face. So Rav Ika bar Chanina l'shtate ben kol gufo askinan. So Rav Ika bar Chanina, Bar Chananya. So he says that we're talking about actually, pouring it over your body, showering. It's basically the equivalent of a shower. We're talking about showering. And what we're saying is that if you heated up this water on Shabbos or on Yom Tif, you would not be allowed to shower in it. However, if you heat it up before Shabbos, you would be allowed to shower in it. That is what And that's what the Mishnah is saying. And this Mishnah is going like the following, the Tana in the following Brisa, where it says, Lo yishtatev adam kol gufo bein bechamen uvein bitzonin tiv Rav Meir. Rav Meir says that you would not be allowed to shower on Shabbos or Yom Tiv, whether it is cold water or whether it's hot water. And even if it was prepared before Yom Tiv or Shabbos. Reb Shimon Matir, Reb Shimon says no problem. You can use this water even if it's hot, assuming that it was heated up beforehand. Reb Yehuda Omer, B'chamin Aser, B'tzonin Mutter. Reb Yehuda says that if it's hot water, it would not be allowed, but if it was cold water, then it would be allowed. So our Mishnah must be like Reb Shimon. That is, we're saying that, this water in the Chamit, that's getting heated up in the pipes of the Chamit Tveria, you wouldn't be allowed to shower in on Shabbos and Yom Tiv, because it was heated up on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. But as long as it was heated up beforehand, you'd be able to shower in them like Reb Shimon. Okay, fine, very good. Amar Rav Chizda, Machlokas Bechli. So Rav Chizda says that the Machlokas between these three rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Shimon, and Reb Meir, is only talking about when you're heating up water in a kli, right? When you heat up water in a kli, in a vessel, so then you wouldn't be allowed to, use it to bathe on Shabbos, right? Or even if, basically, it's Shabbos or it's Yom Tov and, you're using some kind of kli to bathe in. So then there's the machlokas about can you use it, can you not use it? Because somebody who sees you, pouring this vessel over yourself, to shower with, well, they might think that you dafka heated it up today. So the kasha is, do we have to be concerned that maybe he's going to then go and heat up some water for himself, and that wouldn't be okay, because he would have had to prepare it from beforehand. So, however, if the water, if we're talking about water that was heated, coming from like a bathhouse, like from underground, so then it would be permitted because we're not concerned that anybody is going to then heat up water themselves. But what about the story of the people in Tiberia where this pipe was running underground and the Chacham say that it's not allowed? So Eli Itmar Hachi Itmar. No, this is what you have to say. Machlokes bekarka. No, the machlokes is when the water was heated up in the ground. However, if it was heated, if you're getting the water from the ground, but if you're using water from a vessel, everyone would agree that it's not allowed because we have to be concerned that somebody's going to go and heat up water on his own on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Okay. Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, said Rabbi Bar Chana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. That the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, which is that you wouldn't be allowed to shower on Shabbos or Yom Tov with hot water that was prepared beforehand, but you would be allowed to shower with cold water. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar le Rav Yosef. Now Rav Yosef asked Rabbi Bar Chana, Beferush mi'alach or michlalash mi'alach? Did you explicitly hear Rabbi Yochanan say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, or is it from an implication that you're assuming that Rabbi Yochanan would say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? My klala, what is this rule? What is this, generalization from which you would be assuming that the halacha, that Rabbi Yochanan would say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? Amar Rav Tanchum, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yanai, Amar Rebbe. That says Rav Tanchum in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, who says in the name of Rabbi Yanai, who says in the name of Rebbe. That whenever you find two people that are arguing and one person has a compromised position, such as over here, Rabbi Meir said it would be forbidden whether with hot water, whether with cold water. Rabbi Shimon says it would be permitted both with hot water and with cold water. Rabbi Yehuda has the compromised position where he says hot water wouldn't be allowed, but cold water would be allowed. So we say in these cases you always go by the compromised position. So halacha kedeva machira chutz mikule matlanios. The one exception being these shmatas, that we learned about on Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, right? We had a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, and Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Eliezer said that's whether it's min hamuchan, whether it's not min hamuchan, it's still going to be tameh, right? And there was a whole question of what's min hamuchan, what is it, right? We said everyone agreed if it's like in a box, it would be tameh. If it was in the garbage, it would be tahor, right? It was that whole thing, right? So Rabbi Eliezer says that it's going to be tameh. Rabbi Yoshua says that bein min hamuchan, bein shalom min hamuchan, bein she'eino min hamuchan, it's going to be tahor. And then Rabbi Akiva had this compromised position where he says that if it's min hamuchan, which we said was talking about basically if you like put it on some kind of pole coming out of the door or the wall or something, and eino min hamuchan would be if you was like behind the door, right? So Rabbi Yoshua says if it's min hamuchan, so then it would be tameh. If it's she'eino min hamuchan, it would be tahor. So that's a compromised position. So nonetheless, we don't pass him like Rabbi Akiva in that position. That's the exception. Shafal Pish Rabbi Eliezer machmir. Even though Rabbi Eliezer is being machmir, Rabbi Yoshua is being mekil, Rabbi Akiva machriya, and Rabbi Akiva has the compromised position, ein halacha kedivya machriya. In that case, the halacha is not like Rabbi Akiva, who's the machriya. Chada Rabbi Akiva talmidhu. So one reason why we don't pass him like Rabbi Akiva there is because he was a student of Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. And therefore we're not going to paskin like the student in the place of the teachers. Ve'od, and more so, ha'hadar be Rabbi Akiva l'gabe de Rabbi Yoshua. As we said in the Gemara over there on Chav Tes Amud Beis, that Rabbi Akiva ultimately then retracted to hold like Rabbi Yoshua. So therefore, of course, we're not going to paskin like Rabbi Akiva. He doesn't even hold like himself. He reverted. Ve'i michlala mai. Okay, so that was the generalization that you would be able to learn it from. That since there's this rule that when you have, three positions, one of them being a compromised position, we call it the compromised position. So, okay, so then v'imichlala mai. Well, then what's Rav Yosef's problem, right? Rav Yosef wants to know, Rabbi Bar Chana, did you actually hear Rabbi Yochanan say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, or are you just assuming that he would say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda because of this principle? But if we have the principle, so who really cares? At the end of the day, the halacha is going to be like Rabbi Yehuda because he's the compromised position. So the Gemara answers, well, Dilma hanemili b'masnisin ava b'braisa lo. I might think that this statement of Rav Tanchum in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yana, in the name of Rebbe, about going based on the compromised position, maybe that's only relevant in Mishnayos, right? After all, Rebbe was the editor of the Mishnayos. However, maybe when it comes to Brisas, it's not like this, and this was a Brisa. So Amarle Ana Beferish Shmieli, to which Rabbi Bar Chana said, look, don't worry, I heard Rabbi Yochanan say it explicitly. So that the halacha would be like Rabbi Yehuda. Very cool. Okay. And by the way, I mentioned the other day that kind of like when it comes to Tanaim, there's like these bubbles for me. Like I don't necessarily see the flow of like who is like students of who. Well, this just kind of helped with that flow. Because we just said that Rabbi Akiva was a student of Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, which actually makes a perfect flow, right? Because we have the Zugos. The last of the Zugos was Hillel. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that Hillel's student was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer were students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We just now said that Rabbi Akiva was their student, and then Rabbi Akiva's students were like Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi and also Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Then we said the other day that Rebbe was a student of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and then already, the early the early Amoraim like Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, but certainly Rav, they were already hanging out with Rebbe. So now you already get into the Amoraim and all those students, which is kind of cool. Now, often you'll see, or often enough, whatever it comes up, that you see Rabbi Yochanan quoting Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and that's like a little crazy. Well, how's the Amora Rabbi Yochanan quoting the Tana Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai? Now it can kind of make sense because it wasn't so far removed, right? If Rabbi Yochanan was like a really early Amora, and Rebbe kind of overlap with those early Amoraim, and Rebbe's teacher was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, so you can kind of, I don't know, maybe Rabbi Yochanan was like very young when Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was older, who knows? Okay. Let's review Daf Lametes of Masechta Shabbos. So we started off, discussing cooking with something that was heated by the sun. right? The Chachamim say that you wouldn't be allowed to fry an egg on something that was heated up by the sun, because Gazrinan told us Achama, Adu told us or that we're concerned that while, in principle, you'd be allowed to fry an egg on something that was heated by the sun, because you're allowed to cook with the heat of the sun, since it's not the normal way of cooking. But we're concerned that if you cook with something heated by the sun, you might end up cooking with something heated by a fire, which is not allowed. Rabbi Yossi says there's no problem, because we don't make that gezerah, and as long as this thing was heated up by the sun, you'd be allowed to cook an egg on it. Okay, fine. Then we talked about, but can you take an egg and stick it in sand that was heated up by the sun, which is hatmana? Can I insulate it in sand that was heated up by the sun? And everyone seems to agree that that would not be allowed, even Rabbi Yossi. And the question is, why would Rabbi Yossi agree that it's not allowed? So then we had a machlokas Rabbah and Rav Yosef. Rabbah said, because we're concerned that, since it's hatmana, you might then say, if I could insulate it in this sand that's heated up by the sun, maybe I can insulate it in this remetz, which is like ashes that might have coals in it, and we know that is not allowed. And Rav Yosef says that we're concerned that you might end up digging the earth. Okay, and then we had a machlokas there. We tried to bring up proofs and questions and stuff like that, but I think we ended up, everyone seemed to be able to hold their ground over there. Showering on Shabbos and Yom Tif with hot water that was heated beforehand. So we had their three opinions. Meir said it would not be allowed, even if it was cold water, right? Cold water and hot water are not allowed. We do have Shimon's opinion, which is that it would be permitted, both for the hot water and the cold water. And Rabbi Yehuda says that cold water would be permitted, hot water would be forbidden. So he has kind of the compromised position. Then we learned that cool thing at the end, which was the principle that when you have a three-way machlokas, and one of them has a compromised position, so you should follow the compromised position, at least when it comes to Mishnayos. Alright, very cool everybody. Thanks for learning with me. Peace out.